Politics with Connor Klein, and it's belated. I had a live stream on my lifestyle channel yesterday from Lviv, and basically I did not have time for this one afterwards. As it turned out, I had planned it for yesterday evening, but now I'm doing it on Monday morning. So the big story, I guess, from last week in the Russo-Ukrainian war was the United States has more or less disengaged from their attempts at a peace process. I see it in light of the minerals deal been signed, which basically is an agreement to potentially have some cooperation on extracting Ukraine's mineral resources in the future, but that will take a long time. It's unclear how profitable it will be and whether there will actually really be any collaboration between the United States and Ukraine on Ukraine's resources. I see that more as an off-ramp for Donald Trump, because his 100 days, the first 100 days of his new presidency have now come to an end, and he needs to show that he has achieved something, and he had made that rather outlandish campaign promise that he would resolve the Russo-Ukrainian war in one day, and then it became, before he was inaugurated, and then it became, 100 days of his presidency. And these kind of wars are extremely complicated. Even getting to a real ceasefire has proved to be beyond his capabilities and that of his administration. And that isn't a big surprise. It never looked realistic. His policy, his strategy was basically to try and force Ukraine to capitulate. And ultimately, that wouldn't have led to long-term peace in any case, because then Russia would have come back to finish the job, no doubt, in the future. However, he was not able to achieve that, and now he needs to disengage and claim that he has some sort of political win, and the mineral deal does satisfy that requirement. He can talk about how they're going to get so much money out of it, and basically the time horizon in order to find out whether that's true or not is well after Donald Trump is scheduled to leave office as US president. He doesn't really have to worry too much about people remembering 10 years that he promised they'd make money out of it or not, for the purposes of his political priorities of today. And they did have an aid package of sorts where Ukraine basically will be able to get trained on the F-16s, and there's some spare parts. So, Ukraine got something very small in return, and now they will basically have to plan on winning this war without US support. The US has been supplying about 30 to 40% of Ukraine's military, and that is a big gap that will now need to be plugged going forward. It is possible with the help of the European allies and domestic production from Ukraine. However, obviously, this is a blow to the defense of the country, and pretty sad to see that the US is not interested in helping its Ukrainian allies, at least their allies up until at least the Trump administration, in succeeding in holding back Russian aggression. However, on the balance probabilities, that will still be the final outcome. However, the war will probably drag on for a lot longer than it should have. You can also make the same criticism of the Biden administration. They did not arm Ukraine to win the war. They did not desire that outcome in late 2022, early 23. It's actually a former CIA officer who makes the same claim in the last week, now that he's been relieved of duty, that wasn't the strategy of the Biden administration. They did not want Ukraine to win. There are lots of reasons that I've outlined them here on the channel for over the last year, and that is that they were worried about Russia collapsing, and that would then open Pandora's box in terms of so many consequences that would not be controllable: loose nukes, huge increase in war, refugees, and possibly China intervening and grabbing the resources in the east of Russia. Plus, there is also the possibility, as Russia was losing the war, that Vladimir Putin would use nuclear weapons. Very low probability, but still enough to change the calculus, it appears, of the Biden administration. Also have been saying for over 18 months that even without US aid, the most likely result is that Ukraine will win the Russo-Ukrainian war if they never surrender. But it will be at a huge cost in terms of destruction, both civilian and military losses, loss of life, and destruction of large parts of the country in order to succeed. And the basic difference between both sides is that Ukraine is fighting a defensive war for self-preservation, while Russia is fighting an imperialistic war of aggression that is primarily designed to keep Putin in power. That is the main priority that they have. And the secondary goal is territorial expansion, imperialism. However, it is not, or it's basically a war of choice by Russia and not an existential war, although it may turn out to be existential, particular for Vladimir Putin, now that he has unleashed it. So that is where we're at. The big thing coming up this week will be the May 9th parade in Moscow. Ukraine is saying they cannot guarantee the safety of anyone who attends that parade. So even without firing a rocket or a kamikaze drone at the parade itself, Ukraine is dissuading many political figures from going there. Foreign dignitaries, for example. Viktor Orban is not going to attend the May 9th parade, nor is the leader of Serbia, Vučić, I'm never sure how to pronounce his name properly, and several others, including the Indian leader Modi. So it is already put a big dampener on the May 9th celebrations. Putin offered, very disingenuously, a ceasefire proposal to cover the fact that he was going to have a parade in Moscow, and the Ukrainians have not accepted that, saying, well, if you want a ceasefire, we can have one for 30 days. So that is the big important day this week, and it will be interesting to see exactly what happens, whether there will be some Ukrainian tax on the material, the tanks and other armaments that Russia plans to display on the May 9th parade. Whether that will be attacked before, during, or after the parade will be interesting to see. However, just the fact that Zelensky made these comments about not being able to guarantee the security of anyone who went to the parade has seemed to have already had an effect and is a strategic win for Ukraine in dissuading many foreign dignitaries of going to the parade. So drop your questions and comments down below. I am still in Lviv. It has gotten very cold. The weather changed last night, so not sure if I'm going to film outside again. I may do so either today or tomorrow. I am going back to the Baltic states later this week. However, I am here in Ukraine on the ground, and down below in the description to this video is my guide for coming to Ukraine. So you are coming, all the hospitality, how to stay safe. Hospitality means my guide to Lviv, Kiev, Odessa, Chernovtsi, and Uzhhorod, and my recommended cafes, restaurants, cocktail bars, shisha lounges. Not much clubbing going on outside of Uzhhorod, where there is no curfew, and I've been updating that on this trip here to Lviv, and the best spot to go out when you discovered after being here for over a week. So worth your while investing in that. There is a link to it below in the description to this live stream, and drop your comments if you're watching this also on replay, what you expect to see this week in the Russo-Ukrainian war and other topics you would like me to tackle as we go forward here on this channel. So I'll leave it with that. And as always, Slava Ukraini. Got the t-shirt on today. Horom Slava. Don't get him on.